They say a mother's instinct is the strongest force in nature, that a she-wolf would tear the world apart to save her cubs. But on the night of the Blackwood Estate fire, the world learned a dark truth: not all mothers are created equal. While the Alpha King was miles away, his Luna didn't run toward the nursery. She ran for her jewelry box. It took a rejected, wolfless Omega to run into the flames. But when the smoke cleared, the king didn't just find his heirs alive. He found a secret that would shatter his kingdom and reveal who his soul was truly tethered to. This is the story of how a king lost a queen, but found a goddess in the ashes. It was October 14th, the night of the Blood Moon Gala, an event that the tabloids in the werewolf world had been discussing for months. The Silver Mountain Pack, led by the formidable Alpha King Dominic Blackwood, was hosting the event at their sprawling estate in the Colorado Rockies. To the outside world, Dominic and his Luna, Serafina St. James, were the power couple of the century. She was the daughter of a Southern alpha, blonde, statuesque, and dripping in diamonds. He was the brooding, lethal enforcer of pack law. They had two 4-year-old twins, Leo and Ivy, who were the darlings of the pack. But inside the walls of the estate, the air was rotting. Tessa Reynolds adjusted the collar of her scratchy catering uniform. At 24, Tessa was what they called a null, a wolf with dormant genes. She couldn't shift, she healed like a human, and in the hierarchy of the Silver Mountain Pack, she was invisible. She worked 3 jobs just to pay for her sick grandmother's medication. Tonight she wasn't just catering. She had been asked to check on the twins in the East Wing nursery because the regular nanny, Mrs. Higgins, had come down with a sudden, suspicious flu. "Keep your head down, Tessa," she whispered to herself, balancing a tray of champagne flutes. "Just get through the night, collect the overtime, and go home." The ballroom was a sea of velvet and tension. Dominic Blackwood stood near the fireplace, his dark eyes scanning the room. He looked exhausted. Rumors had been swirling that the northern packs were restless, and Dominic had been away on pack business for 3 weeks, only returning an hour ago. He hadn't even had time to see the children yet. Serafina was on his arm, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She kept checking her phone, her manicured nails tapping against the screen. "Dom, darling," Serafina purred, loud enough for the visiting dignitaries to hear. "I'm just going to freshen up. The heat in here is stifling," Dominic grunted, distracted by a conversation with his beta sealers. "Go. Check on the pups while you're upstairs." "Of course," she said, flashing a dazzling smile. Tessa watched Serafina leave. Something felt wrong. The Luna wasn't heading toward the nursery in the East Wing. She was heading toward the master suite in the West Wing, where the wall safe was located. 20 minutes later, the explosion shook the foundation of the house. It wasn't a natural gas leak. The sound was sharp, chemical, and accelerant. The lights in the ballroom flickered and died, plunging the elite into chaos. Screams erupted. "The East Wing," someone shouted. "Fire in the East Wing," Dominic roared, a sound that shook the chandeliers. He shifted mid-stride, his massive black wolf tearing through his tuxedo, charging toward the stairs. But the crowd was panicking, blocking his path. Tessa was already moving. She was in the kitchen when the boom happened, closer to the service stairs. She didn't think. She didn't wait for orders. She dropped the tray and sprinted. The smoke on the second floor was a thick, oily black curtain. It burned her throat, making her eyes water instantly. "Leo!" "Ivy," Tessa screamed, pulling her apron up over her nose. She reached the top of the landing and saw her. Serafino. The Luna was standing at the intersection of the hallway. To her left was the nursery, where smoke was billowing out from under the door. To her right was the exit to the garden terrace, clear and safe. Serafina was clutching a large, leather duffel bag. She looked at the nursery door, then at the exit. She looked at Tessa, her eyes wide with panic, not for her children, but for herself. "Help them," Tessa choked out, stumbling forward. "Serafina, the twins." "I can't," Serafina shrieked. "It's too hard. I have to get help." And then the Luna of the Silver Mountain Pack turned her back on her screaming children and ran toward the fresh air, clutching her bag of jewels. Tessa didn't have time to process the betrayal. She slammed her shoulder against the nursery door. The handle was searing hot. She kicked it twice until the wood splintered. She fell into the room. It was an inferno. The curtains were ablaze, and the heat was enough to blister skin instantly. Huddled in the corner, under a blanket that was starting to smolder, were Leo and Ivy. They were coughing, clinging to each other. "Tessa," Leo cried out, his voice tiny. "I've got you," Tessa gasped, crawling across the floor. The carpet was melting. She grabbed the heavy wool blanket from the undisturbed bed and soaked it with the water from the humidifier on the nightstand. She threw it over the twins. "Hold onto my neck. Do not let go." Tessa stood up, lifting a 50-pound combined weight of terrified children. The ceiling groaned. A beam wreathed in flame cracked above them. She couldn't go back out the door. The hallway was fully engulfed now. She looked at the window. It was a 2-story drop to the hydrangeas below. "Close your eyes," she commanded. Tessa wrapped her arms around them, turned her back to the window, and threw her body through the glass. The world was pain. Sharp, blinding, throbbing pains. Tessa woke up to the rhythmic beeping of machines. She tried to move, but her entire left side felt like it was encased in concrete. She opened her eyes, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights of the Pack Hospital. "She's awake." The voice was deep, vibrating with a power that made the air in the room feel heavy. Tessa turned her head. Dominic Blackwood was sitting in a chair next to her bed. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His dress shirt was ruined, stained with soot and blood, the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms covered in ash. "The kids," Tessa rasped. Her throat felt like she had swallowed razor blades. Dominic leaned forward. The intensity in his gaze was terrifying. "Leo has a broken arm. Ivy has mild smoke inhalation. They are sleeping in the next room. They are alive because of you." Tessa let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Tears pricked her eyes. Thank God Dominic didn't relax. You have second-degree burns on your back and left arm. You broke 3 ribs and your collarbone when you hit the ground. You shielded them with your body. I did what anyone would do, Tessa whispered. No, Dominic growled, a low rumble that wasn't anger at her, but anger at the world. You did what their mother didn't do. The memory of the hallway flooded back. Serafina turning away. The bag. Where is she? Tessa asked. Dominic stood up and paced the small room. She claims she was cut off by the fire. She claims she tried to get to them, but the ceiling collapsed. She was found in the garden, unconscious from smoke. Tessa stared at him. Do you believe her? Dominic stopped pacing. He looked at Tessa, his golden eyes searching hers. He was the Alpha King. He could smell a lie from a mile away. But Serafina was his mate, or so everyone thought. To accuse a Luna of abandoning her pups was treason. It was a death sentence. I found her bag, Dominic said quietly. It wasn't full of emergency supplies, Tessa. It was full of the St. James heirlooms and bearer bonds. She had packed it before the alarm even went off. Tessa's heart hammered. She saw me, Alpha. She saw me in the hallway. I begged her to help. She ran. Dominic closed his eyes, his fists clenching so hard his knuckles turned white. When he opened them again, the golden color of his iris had swallowed the pupil. His wolf was near the surface. Rest, Tessa, he said, his voice dangerously calm. You are under my personal protection now. No one touches you. And no one, he paused, looking at the door, lies to me forever. Outside the room, chaos was brewing. Serafina was in the VIP suite of the hospital, seemingly without a scratch. Surrounded by reporters, she had summoned herself. She was spinning a tale of heroism, claiming she had directed the rescue efforts, claiming the fire was an assassination attempt on her. But Dominic knew the truth. When he had found Tessa on the lawn, bleeding and broken with his cubs wrapped in her arms, his wolf didn't howl in grief. It howled in recognition. For the first time in 5 years, since the day he met Serafina, Dominic felt the pull. Not the political alliance he had with his wife, but the raw, magnetic, biological pull of a true mate. And it was pulling him toward the broken girl in the hospital bed. 3 days later, the atmosphere in the Blackwood Estate was suffocating. The East Wing was a charred skeleton, a constant reminder of the near tragedy. Tessa had been discharged, but not to her tiny apartment in the city. Dominic had insisted, commanded, really, that she stay in the Alpha's guest quarters in the West Wing to recover. He claimed it was so she could be close to the twins, who were refusing to sleep unless Tessa was in the room. Serafina was not pleased. It is inappropriate, Dom, Serafina hissed, pacing the length of Dominic's study. She was wearing a silk robe that cost more than Tessa's life earnings. She is a servant. A null. Having her in the family quarters sends the wrong message to the pack. We look weak, Dominic sat behind his mahogany desk, reviewing the arson investigator's preliminary report. He didn't look up. "My children scream if she leaves the room, Serafina." Leo wakes up crying about the bad fireman. Tessa is the only one who can calm him down. "You haven't changed a single diaper or read a single story since the accident." "I am recovering from trauma," Serafina snapped, clutching her chest theatrically. "I almost died." "You didn't have a singe on you, Sierra," Dominic said, finally looking up. His gaze was cold. "And Officer Harrison found traces of accelerant near the nursery door, but none near the master suite." "Why is that?" Serafina froze. For a second, her mask slipped, revealing a flash of pure, venomous fear. "Are you accusing me? I am your Luna. I am the mother of your children. Are you?" Dominic stood up, walking slowly around the desk. "Because when I walked into the nursery this morning, Leo asked why Mommy ran away." "Kids don't lie, Serafina. Wolves don't lie. Only people with something to hide lie." He stopped inches from her. He sniffed the air. Underneath her expensive perfume, Chanel No. 5 applied heavily, there was a scent. It was faint, musky, and masculine. It wasn't his scent. "Who is he?" Dominic whispered. Serafina stepped back, her eyes wide. "I don't know what you're talking about. You smell like another alpha," Dominic growled. "You smelled like him the night of the gala, too. I thought it was just a guest you had greeted. But the scent is stale on you now. It's ingrained." Before Serafina could answer, the door to the study burst open. It was Silas, the beater. He looked pale. "Alpha, you need to see this," Silas said, holding up a tablet. "We recovered the server from the security room. The fire damaged most of the cameras, but the cloud backup for the hallway cam. It finished uploading this morning." Serafina lunged for the tablet, her claws extending for the first time in her life. "Give me that." Dominic was faster. He caught her wrist in midair. He didn't squeeze, but the hold was unbreakable. He took the tablet from Silas with his free hand. He pressed play. The grainy, black and white footage showed the hallway. It showed the smoke starting. It showed Serafina stepping out of the master bedroom. She wasn't coughing. She looked at her watch. She waited. Then a figure stepped out of the shadows near the back stairs. A man. He was wearing a hooded maintenance uniform, but the way he moved was predatory. He handed Serafina the duffel bag. She kissed him. A deep, passionate kiss. Then the man pointed toward the nursery and made a cutthroat motion. Serafina nodded, turned, and ran toward the exit. The man in the hood turned toward the camera for a split second before vanishing. Dominic felt his heart stop. He knew that face. It was Kieran Thorne, the alpha of the exiled Red River Pack, Dominic's sworn enemy. Dominic looked at Serafina. The bond he thought he shared with her, that thin, fragile thread, snapped. It wasn't just broken, it dissolved, revealing it had never been real. It was a spell, a glamour, a fake bond manufactured to infiltrate his pack. You didn't just abandon them. Dominic's voice was so low it vibrated the floorboards. You let him in. You let him try to kill my heirs. Serafina realized the game was up. Her beautiful face twisted into a sneer. Your heirs. Those weak little runts. Kieran and I will have stronger sons. Better sons. And once you were grieving, I was going to console you. Right into an early grave, she wrenched her arm free, expecting to shift and fight. But she forgot one thing. She was in the den of the Alpha King. And she was no longer protected by the title of Luna. Sealers, Dominic said, his eyes glowing a violent crimson. Lock her in the silver cells. And get Tesso. I need to ensure the children are safe. The war has just begun. The storm that battered the Blackwood Estate that night mirrored the chaos inside the Alpha's mind. Rain lashed against the reinforced glass of the West Wing, where the air was warm, scented with lavender and the soft, milky smell of sleeping children. Tessa Reynolds sat on the edge of the oversized velvet armchair, her arm in a sling, watching the twins. Leo and Ivy were curled up together in the center of the massive king-sized bed, Dominic's bed. They refused to sleep in a new nursery, and they refused to sleep without Tessa. Every time Tessa tried to stand up to leave, to return to the servants' quarters where she belonged, Leo would whimper in his sleep, his little hand reaching out for her. Stay, a voice rumbled from the doorway. Tessa jumped, flinching as her broken ribs protested the sudden movement. Dominic Blackwood stood there, filling the frame. He had showered, washing away the soot and blood of the fire, and was dressed in fresh tactical gear, black cargo pants, and a fitted black t-shirt that clung to his broad chest. He looked lethal, but his eyes, fixed on her, were filled with a strange, terrifying softness. I didn't mean to intrude, Alpha, Tessa whispered, bowing her head. The children. They were scared. They are safe because of you, Dominic said, walking into the room. The sheer size of him made the spacious suite feel small. And you are not intruding. This is where you stay now. Tessa looked up, confused. Sir, my beta sealers has moved your things from the dormitory, Dominic stated, his voice leaving no room for argument. You will not return to the servants' quarters. It's not safe. Serafina has allies, people loyal to her family's money, or worse, to Kieran. Until I root them out, you and the children stay here. Under my guard, Tessa's heart hammered against her ribs. To stay in the Alpha's private sanctuary was unheard of for a null. But the council, Elder Gwen, will not approve. A null in the royal suite. Dominic growled, a low vibration that Tessa felt in her toes. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, crouching down so he was eye level with her. Let me be clear, Tessa, he said, his voice rough. I do not care about the council. I do not care about tradition. I care about loyalty. And tonight I realized something. He reached out, his large, calloused hand hovering near her face. He hesitated, then gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers grazed her neck, and a jolt of electricity, sharp and hot, zapped through them both. Tessa gasped. Dominic's pupils blew wide, swallowing the gold. "Did you feel that?" he whispered. I'm a null alpha," Tessa stammered, trembling. "I don't feel the bond." "I can't. You aren't a null," Dominic murmured, leaning closer. He inhaled deeply, near the pulse point of her neck. "I smelled it in the fire, but the smoke masked it. Now I'm sure. You smell like rain and wild sage." "You smell like home," Tessa froze. Rain and wild sage. That was the scent of the lunar bloodline, a scent that had been lost for generations. "My parents were rogues," Tessa said, tears welling in her eyes. "They died when I was 3. I was raised in the Pack orphanage. The doctors tested me. I have no wolf. Doctors can be bought," Dominic said darkly, his mind racing. "And test results can be faked. Serafina's family, the St. James line, has controlled the medical centers in this region for a decade. If you were a threat to her, if you had a stronger bloodline." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The implication hung in the air like a guillotine. Before Tessa could respond, the radio on Dominic's belt crackled. Alpha Silas's voice was tight with tension. "You need to come down to the silver cells. Serafina is talking. And you're not going to like what she has to say." Dominic stood up, the moment of intimacy shattered. The softness vanished from his eyes, replaced by the cold, hard steel of the king. "Watch them," he commanded, nodding toward the sleeping twins. "Do not open this door for anyone but me or Silas. I will protect them with my life," Tessa vowed. Dominic looked at her, and for a split second, he looked like he wanted to kiss her. "I know you will. That is why you are the only one I trust." He turned and strode out of the room, leaving Tessa breathless, her skin still burning where his fingers had touched her. The silver cells were located 3 stories beneath the estate, carved directly into the granite of the mountain. They were cold, damp, and designed to suppress a wolf's ability to shift. Serafina St. James sat on the cot in cell 1. Her designer dress was ruined, her hair was a mess, and her mascara was running down her face. But she didn't look defeated. She looked manic. When Dominic entered the interrogation room, separated from the cell by a pane of silver-infused glass, he found Silas pacing. "What is it?" Dominic demanded. "She's demanding a lawyer, a priest, and a doctor," Silas said, disgust dripping from his voice. "She says she has information. That will bring the council to its knees." Dominic pressed the intercom button. "You have nothing I want, Serafina. Kieran is being hunted as we speak. His pack is scattered." Serafina laughed, a shrill sound that echoed in the concrete box. She walked to the glass, pressing her hand against it. "Oh, Dom, you always were so simple," she sneered. "Kieran isn't running. He's regrouping. And you can't touch me. You can't kill me and you can't exile me. And why is that?" Dominic asked, his voice deadly calm. You attempted to murder my children. That is a capital offense, because, Serafina smiled, rubbing her stomach, I'm pregnant. Dominic went still. Silas gasped. A new heir, Silas whispered. Not his, Dominic said instantly. I haven't touched her in 6 months. Serafina's smile widened. Does it matter? The law states you cannot execute a pregnant female, regardless of the paternity. The pup is innocent. And as long as I am carrying Kieran's child, I am untouchable. Dominic slammed his fist against the reinforced glass. The sound was like a gunshot. You think carrying a bastard will save you? I will keep you in this cell until the day you give birth, and then I will strip you of everything. You'll try, Serafina hissed. But Kieran is coming. And he's not coming alone. He has the Northern Alliance. He has the St. James fortune. And he knows about your little pet upstairs. Dominic's blood ran cold. Tessa, Serafina spat the name like a curse. The little null. God. She thinks she's a null, doesn't she? Dominic signaled for Silas to cut the audio feed so Serafina couldn't hear them, but he kept the channel open to listen to her. What do you know about her? Dominic demanded through the intercom. Serafina examined her nails, enjoying the power shift. My father was the one who processed the orphans 20 years ago. He found a little girl with a bloodline so potent it would have rivaled the St. James legacy. A true alpha female. If she had been allowed to present her wolf, she would have been the most powerful Luna in the state. I couldn't have that competition, could I? What did you do? Dominic roared. Wolfsbane suppressants, Serafina said casually. Injected into her spine when she was 5. It put her wolf into a coma. It made her weak. A servant. Perfect for scrubbing floors. But if she wakes up, well, the withdrawal might kill her. Dominic felt a rage so pure it nearly blinded him. Tessa wasn't just a victim of the fire. She was a victim of a 20-year conspiracy to steal her birthright. Sealers, Dominic barked, turning away from the glass. Get the pack, Doctor. The trusted one. Dr. Aris. Get him to the West Wing immediately. We need to run blood work on Tessa. On it, Sealers said, already dialing. And double the guard on the perimeter, Dominic added, his hand resting on his sidearm. Serafina is stalling. She's waiting for something. As if on cue, the emergency alarms blared throughout the bunker. The lights flickered red. Breach, the voice of the security chief, crackled over the PA system. Sector 4. The power plant. They've blown the main generator, Dominic cursed. The silver cells ran on electronic locks. If the power failed, the magnetic seals on the doors would disengage. It's a breakout, Dominic realized. She wasn't waiting for a lawyer. She was waiting for the blackout. The lights died completely. The hum of the magnetic locks whined down into silence. In the pitch black, Dominic heard the mechanical clank of cell 1 unlocking. Sealer's light, Dominic ordered, shifting into his partial form, his eyes adjusting to the dark. Sealer's cracked a flare, bathing the room in harsh red light. The cell door was open. Serafina was gone. But she hadn't just walked out. The wall at the back of her cell had been breached from the outside. A tunnel. They didn't come through the gate, sealers said, horrified. They've been digging for weeks. Dominic didn't wait. He didn't chase Serafina. His instinct screamed one name. Tessa. If Kieran and Serafina were loose, they wouldn't just run. They would try to finish what they started. They would go for the twins. And they would go for the woman protecting them. Dominic shifted fully. A massive midnight black wolf with fur like shadowed steel. He didn't take the elevator. He bounded up the emergency stairs, clearing entire flights in single leaps. He roared, a sound that carried through the concrete, a command to his pack to fight, and a warning to anyone near his family. The West Wing was plunged into darkness when the main generator died, but the lightning from the storm outside illuminated the hallway in strobe light flashes. Tessa Reynolds stood in the center of the Alpha's bedroom, a heavy iron poker from the fireplace gripped in her trembling hands. Behind her, Leo and Ivy were hiding under the massive oak bed, their small whimpers silenced by Tessa's frantic hush. "Stay down," she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "No matter what you hear, do not come out." The heavy oak door to the suite shuddered. Someone was throwing themselves against it. Thud. Thud. Drag. The wood splintered around the lock. With a final deafening crash, the door flew open, hanging off its hinges. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted by a flash of lightning, was Kieran Thorne. The rogue Alpha was massive, his eyes glowing a sickly yellow, his grin predatory. Beside him, Serafina looked less like a Luna and more like a wraith, her dress torn. Her hair wild, a jagged piece of glass in her hand. "Well, well," Kieran drawled, stepping over the threshold. "The nanny plays guard dog. Get out," Tessa said, her voice shaking but defiant. She raised the poker. Serafina laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, put it down, you pathetic little null. We aren't here for you. We're here for the runts," she gestured toward the bed. Kieran grabbed the boy. "I'll take the girl. We need leverage if we're going to get out of the territory alive." "Over my dead body," Tessa snarled. "That can be arranged," Kieran growled. He lunged. He moved faster than any human could track, a blur of muscle and violence. He backhanded Tessa across the room. She flew through the air, crashing into the heavy vanity table. The mirror shattered, raining glass down on her. Pain exploded in her head, and the world spun. She tasted blood. "Tessa," Leo screamed from under the bed. "Quiet," Serafina shrieked, diving for the bed skirt. She grabbed Ivy by the ankle, dragging the screaming child out. "Let her go," Tessa gasped, trying to push herself up. Her limbs felt like lead. The room was spinning. Kieran laughed, grabbing Leo by the back of his pajamas and lifting him into the air like a doll. The boy kicked and bit, but it was useless against an alpha. "Dominic will kill you," Tessa wheezed, crawling forward. "Dominic is busy dealing with my pack at the perimeter," Kieran sneered. By the time he gets here, his heirs will be rogue chow. He tightened his grip on Leo's neck. The boys started to choke. Something inside Tessa snapped. It wasn't a mental decision. It was biological. It was primal. Deep in her spine, where the poison of the suppressants had lived for 20 years, a dormant force was waking up. It felt like liquid fire pouring through her veins. The pain was excruciating, worse than the fire, worse than the crash. It was the pain of a soul expanding into a body that was too small. No. The scream didn't come from her throat. It came from her mind. They are minds. A shockwave of energy blasted outward from Tessa's body, shattering the remaining windows. Kieran stumbled back, dropping Leo. Serafina covered her eyes, shrieking as a blinding white light filled the room. Tessa's back arched. Her bones cracked and reshaped with sickening speed. Four, white as the driven snow and glowing with an ethereal luminescence, burst through her skin. She didn't shift into a normal wolf. She shifted into something ancient. Something the pack hadn't seen in centuries. A ghost wolf. Massive, silent, and terrifyingly powerful. When the light faded, a giant white wolf stood where the broken girl had been. She was larger than Kieran. Her eyes weren't yellow or red, they were a piercing, glowing violet. Kieran stared, his jaw dropping. Impossible. A null. The white wolf didn't growl. She moved. She was a blur of white lightning. She slammed into Kieran, her jaws locking onto his shoulder with the force of a hydraulic press. Bone crunched. Kieran howled in agony, shifting into his brown wolf to fight back, but he was outmatched. The white wolf tossed him across the room like a rag doll. He hit the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Serafina scrambled backward, terror etched on her face. What are you? The white wolf turned her violet gaze on Serafina. She bared her teeth, stepping between the Luna and the weeping children. Kieran, bleeding and desperate, scrambled to his feet. Kill it. Kill the beast, he charged again. But before he could reach her, a black shadow tore through the doorway. Dominic had arrived. The Alpha King didn't stop to assess the situation. He saw the threat to his mate and his cubs, and he became death incarnate. He intercepted Kieran in midair, his massive black jaws clamping around the rogue's throat. The two males crashed to the floor in a ball of fur and fury. But the fight was short. Dominic was fueled by a rage that burned hotter than the sun. With a savage twist of his head, he snapped Kieran's neck. The rogue Alpha went limp. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the storm outside and the heavy panting of the wolves. Dominic stood over the body, his chest heaving. He turned his head slowly. He saw Serafina cowering in the corner. And then he saw her. The white wolf. Dominic froze. His wolf whimpered, bowing its head instinctively. He recognized the scent, rain and wild sage, magnified 1,000 times. "Mate," his wolf whispered. "True mate." Tessa, in her wolf form, looked at him. Then she looked at the children. She trotted over to Leo and Ivy, who were huddled together. She didn't scare them. She lay down in front of them, curling her massive white body around them like a shield, and let out a soft, soothing chuff. Leo reached out a trembling hand and buried it in her thick white fur. Tessa, the white wolf, licked his face. Dominic shifted back to human form, not caring about his nudity. He walked slowly toward them, falling to his knees. He reached out a hand. Tessa didn't flinch. She leaned into his touch, nuzzling his palm. "I found you," Dominic whispered, tears streaming down his face. "After all this time." "You were right here." Serafina tried to sneak toward the door while they were distracted. "Don't move," Dominic said, without looking at her. His voice was ice. Sealers and a dozen enforcers swarmed into the room, weapons drawn. "Take her," Dominic commanded, finally looking at his former wife with eyes devoid of emotion. "To the high-security prison in the north. She stands trial for treason, attempted murder, and the suppression of a royal bloodline. You can't do this," Serafina screamed as they dragged her away. "I am the Luna." "I am the Luna." "No," Dominic said, looking back at the white wolf, whose violet eyes watched him with infinite love. "You never were." The silence in the Alpha's private recovery wing was heavy, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor and the howling wind of the blizzard outside. It had been 3 days since the attack in the West Wing, 3 days since the world had turned upside down. Tessa Reynolds floated in a space between waking and sleeping. Her body felt different. Heavier, yet strangely more vibrant. Every nerve ending seemed to be humming with a low-voltage electricity. The deep, aching void that had existed in her chest for 20 years, the silence where her wolf should have been, was gone. In its place was a presence. Massive. Ancient. Silent. She opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Dominic. The Alpha King was asleep in a chair pulled uncomfortably close to her bed. He was still wearing the shredded remains of his tactical gear, his hand gripping hers so tightly his knuckles were white. He looked older than he had 3 days ago. There were dark circles under his eyes, and a new scar ran down his jawline, a parting gift from Kieran. Tessa squeezed his hand. Dominic's eyes snapped open instantly. The gold in his irises flared, bright and intense. "You're back," he breathed, his voice rough with disuse. He stood up, leaning over her, checking the monitors, checking her eyes, acting on pure instinct. "Don't try to move. Your body is still knitting itself back together." The shift. It was violent. Your bone density changed in seconds. "The children," Tessa croaked. Her voice sounded like she had swallowed gravel. "Safe," Dominic promised, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. "They are in the adjoining room with sealers and a dozen guards. They refuse to leave the floor until they see you. Leo has been asking every hour if the white wolf is awake." Tessa closed her eyes, the memory washing over her. The pain. The rage. The white fern. It wasn't a dream. No, Dominic said softly. It was a miracle. He pulled a chair closer, his expression hardening slightly. Dr. Aris finished the blood work this morning. The suppressants Seraphina's family used on you. They were military grade. They were designed to kill a wolf, not just suppress it. But your bloodline fought back. For 20 years, your wolf was growing, compressing, building pressure like a diamond. When you finally broke through, you didn't just shift, Tessa. You evolved. A ghost wolf, Tessa whispered the term she had heard the guards muttering. The first in 400 years, Dominic confirmed. The last one was the founder of the Blackwood line. You aren't just a wolf, Tessa. You are royalty by blood, not just by marriage. The justice of the pack a week later, Tessa was strong enough to stand. 2 weeks later, she was strong enough to rule. The great hall of the Silver Mountain Estate was packed to the rafters. Every alpha from the surrounding territories had traveled through the snow to witness two things: the rise of the ghost wolf and the fall of the traitor Luna. Dominic sat on the obsidian throne, his face a mask of stone. Tessa sat beside him, not on a lower chair as was custom for a new mate, but on a throne he had commissioned specifically for her, carved from white birch and inlaid with silver. Seraphina, St. James, was dragged into the center of the room. She was unrecognizable. The glamour of expensive makeup and designer clothes was gone. She wore a gray prison jumper, and her wrists were bound in silver cuffs that burned her skin. She looked small, petty, and terrified. Beside her stood her father, Richard St. James, the mastermind behind the medical conspiracy. He held his head high, but his eyes darted around the room, looking for allies that were no longer there. Seraphina St. James, Dominic's voice boomed through the hall, amplified by the acoustics of the cavernous room. You are charged with high treason, attempted regicide of the heirs, and the illegal use of Class A suppressants on a pack member. How do you plead? I did what I had to do, Seraphina shrieked, her voice cracking. I did it for the stability of the region. That girl, she was a threat. A freak, she pointed a trembling finger at Tessa. Tessa didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She stood up slowly, the movement graceful and predatory. The hall went silent. You didn't do it for stability, Seraphina, Tessa said, her voice calm but carrying a resonance that made the wolves in the back row shiver. You did it because you were afraid. You knew that if I ever woke up, your mediocrity would be exposed. Tessa walked down the steps of the dais. The guards tensed, but Dominic signaled them to stand down. You stole 20 years of my life, Tessa said, stopping inches from the woman who had tormented her. You treated me like a slave in my own home. You left Leo and Ivy to burn. They aren't even your children, Seraphina spat. They are now, Tessa replied simply. Because a mother is the one who stays. A mother is the one who protects. Dominic stood up. The council has deliberated. Richard Sund. James, for your crimes against the biological sanctity of our kind, you are sentenced to the silver mines for the remainder of your natural life. Your assets are seized and will be used to fund the orphanages you neglected. Richard slumped, defeated. And you, Serafina, Dominic continued, his eyes cold. You wanted to be special. You wanted to be noticed. Your sentence is exile. But not just from the territory. Dominic gestured to the pack witch, an ancient woman named Aurea. You will be stripped of your wolf, Dominic pronounced. You will live as a human without the strength, speed, or healing of our kind. You will be banished to the human cities, where you will work for every meal you eat. You will never hear the pack song again, Serafina screamed. It was a raw, primal sound of horror. To lose one's wolf was a fate worse than death. No. Dominic, please. Kill me. Just kill me. Death is too easy. Dominic turned away. Take her. As the guards dragged the screaming former Luna away, Tessa felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't joy she felt, it was closure. The rot had been cut out. The wound could finally heal. The winter solstice months passed. The scars on the estate healed, replaced by new construction and stronger stone. The scars on the children healed too. Leo no longer had nightmares about the fire. Ivy had started speaking again, her laughter ringing through the halls. They didn't call Tessa Nanny anymore. One day over breakfast, Ivy had simply asked for the butter by saying, "Mom, can you pass the knife?" Dominic had frozen, his fork halfway to his mouth. Tessa had just smiled and passed the knife. It was the most natural thing in the world. But there was one final step remaining. The winter solstice was the most sacred night of the year for the wolfkind. It was the night the moon was closest to the earth, the night the goddess was listening. Dominic led Tessa out to the sacred grove, a clearing in the heart of the forest where the trees were so old their roots were said to touch the underworld. The snow was knee-deep, glittering like diamond dust under the massive full moon. Tessa wore a cloak of deep velvet, lined with white fur. She looked every inch the queen she had become. "Are you ready?" Dominic asked, stopping at the edge of the ritual circle. "I'm terrified," Tessa admitted, her breath clouding in the freezing air. "What if the pack doesn't accept me fully? What if they still see the servant girl?" Dominic turned her to face him. He took her gloved hands in his. "Look at them, Tessa." He gestured to the woods surrounding the grove. Tessa looked. Hundreds of pairs of eyes reflected the moonlight. The entire pack was there. The Northern Alliance was there. Representatives from the Southern packs were there. They weren't standing in judgment. They were kneeling. One by one, as she watched, they lowered their heads to the snow. It was a sign of absolute submission. "They don't see a servant," Dominic whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "They see the woman who walked through fire for the Alpha's cubs. They see the white wolf. They see their salvation." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. She squeezed Dominic's hands. "Okay. "Let's do this." They walked into the center of the circle. The pack elder, a man with skin like weathered parchment, was waiting for them with a chalice of moon water and the ceremonial bonding dagger. "Tonight," the elder intoned, "we bind two souls into one. Not for politics, not for power, but for the balance of the world." Dominic unbuttoned his heavy coat, baring his chest to the biting cold. Tessa did the same, letting her cloak fall. The cold air hit her skin, but she didn't shiver. Her internal fire was too strong. "I, Dominic Blackwood," he began, his voice ringing out clear and true, "Alpha of the Silver Mountain, offer my blood, my bone, and my breath to you." He took the dagger and made a shallow cut over his heart. "I, Tessa Reynolds," she answered, her voice steady, "Luna of the Silver Mountain, accept your offering and give you mine. Your enemies are my enemies. Your pack is my pack." She took the dagger and cut the skin over her own heart. They stepped together, skin to skin, pressing the wounds together. The magic wasn't subtle. It was an explosion. A pillar of golden light erupted from the ground beneath them, shooting up into the night sky. The clouds above the mountains swirled and parted, revealing the moon in all its glory. Tessa gasped as she felt Dominic's soul crash into hers. It wasn't invasive. It was like finding the missing piece of a puzzle. She felt his strength, his fierce protectiveness, his overwhelming love for her. And he felt hers, her resilience, her compassion, her ancient power. The bond snapped into place, solid as iron, eternal as the mountains. Dominic pulled back, his eyes glowing so bright they illuminated his face. He smiled, a genuine, boyish smile that took years off his face. "Hello, my mate," he whispered. "Hello, my king," she replied. Then, without a word, the change took them. Dominic shifted into his massive, midnight black wolf. Tessa shifted into the ghost wolf, her white fur glowing with an inner luminescence. Together, the black wolf and the white wolf threw their heads back and howled. It was a sound of victory, a sound of joy. And then the forest erupted. Thousands of wolves shifted and joined the chorus. The sound shook the snow from the trees. It echoed down the valleys and over the peaks. It was a message to every rogue, every enemy, and every doubter in the world. The Silver Mountain pack was whole again. The king had his queen, and the reign of the ghost wolf had begun. 6 months later, Dominic walked into his study, holding a steaming mug of coffee. He stopped in front of the fireplace, looking up at the new painting that hung above the mantel. It had replaced the old, stuffy portrait of him and Serafina. This painting was vibrant. It showed a summer meadow. In the foreground, Leo and Ivy were tackling a massive black wolf, laughing, their hands buried in his fur. Watching over them, lying in the tall grass with a serene expression, was the white wolf. And standing behind them all in human form was Tessa. She was laughing, her hand resting on the black wolf's head, her eyes bright with happiness. "Dom," he turned. Tessa was leaning in the doorway, holding a swaddled bundle in her arms. "He's finally asleep," she whispered. Dominic walked over, peering down at the newborn baby in her arms. His son. Their son. The baby had a tuft of black hair, but when he opened his sleepy eyes, they were a brilliant, glowing violet. He's going to be trouble, Dominic chuckled, kissing Tessa on the forehead. He's going to be perfect, Tessa corrected him. Dominic wrapped his arms around his family, pulling them close. The fire crackled in the hearths. The snow fell softly outside. The house was warm. The pack was safe. And for the first time in his life, the Alpha King had everything he had ever wanted. And that brings us to the end of Dominic and Tessa's journey. From the ashes of betrayal to the throne of the Silver Mountain, they proved that destiny isn't written in the stars, it's written in the choices we make. Tessa chose bravery when she had nothing, and in doing so, she gained everything. If this story touched your heart, please smash that like button. It seriously helps the algorithm find more werewolf romance fans like us. And I have a question for you guys for the next video. Do you prefer stories where the main character discovers a secret power like Tessa, or stories where they use their human wits to win? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you are subscribed with the notification bell turned on. I have a new story coming next week involving a runaway bride and a lichen prince that you do not want to miss. Thank you so much for listening. Stay wild, and I'll see you in the next one.